to talk. They didn't ask me to sing. I'm so glad. And I tell you what, if she go down on Decatur streets looking like that and singing like that, I'm just saying. But thank you so much for sharing your history and your gifts. Wow, and Billie Holiday showed up. Wow, great singing all around the place.
Okay, so guys, at this time we will open the program up for questions. Presenters and opening speakers, you guys gave us so much information. I mean, you guys were awesome. Weren't they awesome? Give them another hand. You guys were so awesome. So, I can ask the first question. And does anybody have questions? Maybe I should start it off. Oh, no. Okay.
Dr. Eddy, call and response. Yes. That was a major part of jazz. Can you talk about that briefly?
The question was, call and response is a major part of jazz. And from my perspective, the whole practice of call and response really comes out of the African American folk tradition. And it comes out of a sense of building community by having people respond to you. So the whole idea of the black church experience, when people say amen to the preacher, it allows them to kind of respond to what the preacher is giving them. What's important in my writings is that I talk about call and response as a way for African Americans to affirm themselves. Because remember, in slavery, an African American could not speak unless given permission. And so the whole idea of being able to freely say amen, or tell the story, or preach it, brother, or to sing that, is the way in which we created a sense of community and what I call self-empowerment.
You know what? No, wait, one second.
Is that the speaker? Yeah, you're going to
I need to ask about
Can you hear? We probably need it. Hello.
But
Where's Marissa?
that call and response, as he said, is very much a tradition as to who we are as an African people. And coming out of slavery, we always said we didn't want no quiet church. And you can hear that you can hear our churches before you can see them, because it was an opportunity for us to express who we are. And that call and response, like you said, let us know, like, go ahead, brother, yeah, tell us. If the church is too quiet, somebody ain't preaching. That's how we do things.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I'm aware that the Charleston originated from a dance back in Africa. Did the jazz music too stem from a certain rhythm or type of music in Africa?
Everything about jazz is African, from the rhythmic sensibilities, not a particular rhythm, but really an approach to rhythm, an approach to musical time comes out of an African experience. It's not a straight line though, because if you think about it, when African cultures were brought to the New World, there were many different African cultures with all the street traditions of their own. And part of the irony of jazz is, once again, this is a story about how music and culture evolved because of the particular history. In North American slavery, different African groups were intentionally mixed together so that they could not have a sense of community as Africans, but rather they had only an existence as a slave. And so in a sense, by bringing all of these different African cultures together under slavery, you create kind of a gumbo of Africanness. And that is what, in a sense, creates the sound of jazz. It's interesting that other slave cultures in the New World don't sound like North American jazz. The slave culture in Cuba or Haiti or in South America is much more African in its literal sound because of the nature of slavery. It was so different there. And so it's a fascinating way to connect, I think, the history with the culture that it produces. I don't want to hog this conversation. But certainly there must be other questions. These folks have made some wonderful presentations. Any other curiosities or anything you can find? Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. My question is in regards to Ma Rainey. You mentioned that she was performed at a theater in Atlanta.
The 81 Theater.
The day one or 81?
The number 81. I'm
And
sorry.
where was that?
Downtown Decatur.
Okay.
Say the name again, please.
81, the number 81 Theater.
80. Yes, ma'am. Oh. One here, one there.
I just want to follow up his answer to his question. I'm a recently retired professor from Georgia State in Black history. And where you were asking the 81 on Georgia State's campus, if you're going down Cab Avenue that becomes Decatur Street, right after you pass Collins Street, there's a building now that is the sports arena, and then next to that is another building. That's where the 81 was, right there. And it was also where Carmen Dorsey and Bessie Smith and all those people played. And right before you got to the 81 with Cab Avenue, there's a street called Collins, and that's where you turn kids and go up under to the student center and all that. That was the white prostitute street. Wanted you to go to the club on Old Avenue and not to the 81, because you could get an 81 and stay in 81 today. But it's literally on Georgia State.
Another thing about the 81. Now, jazz bands could play there, but they would play, as I mentioned, and Ellis mentioned, two separate events. So there was one for African Americans, but I was a little bit surprised until I thought about it that the later one at midnight was for the white people. So that was okay to sneak out then, just undercover so nobody could see you. Or maybe they didn't want African Americans out that late. But I just thought, wow, they don't want us out that late, but then that gives everybody else a chance to go, I'll be right back, honey. And go down to Decatur Street.
I have wondered about Alonzo Herndon and how it was that his mansion was never damaged or destroyed when all of the other things were being destroyed, all the things on wealth. What is your theory about that?
It's an uneducated guess. His barbershop, he tended to white people in his barbershop. And in the African American of means at that time, you had to be able to cross the color line. You had to know who your friends were on both sides. So perhaps he had enough friends that he was not as impacted. And then again, as you begin to talk about that riot in 1906, they attacked a lot of the black institutions. And we were talking about presidents of these colleges donned rifles and guns and said, make sure the women in the area come up here to the old Clark College campus, and we will protect them. So it may have been a matter of us saying, we're going to draw the line right here. And it is beyond economics, because they're shooting everybody. They don't ask you how much you make or where you work. So it could be a combination of both. Knowing how to navigate that color line, Ben Davis did it well. You couldn't have built an institution like that without having some good white people, as we say. And so all of that had to come together. You had to kind of to learn the culture and the terrain where you were. But still, when it came down to right or wrong, or who was doing what, I don't care what you made, if you were a professor or if you were a student, you protected that African American community.
Since we're theorizing, I'll add to my theory. Alonzo Herndon and the Herndon family, these were families that were a part of the church that I presently pastor. The church that I pastored had a reputation of not being a loud, raucous church, but a quiet, civilized, very educated demographic, and the Herndons were a part of that. It was a great philanthropist, the first Congregational church, because black Congregationalists were some of the first black educated people in the South. And so I think it's in part because of what you described. Herndon had a relationship with the business community and with white people in general. And so I think in some ways because of his special status, and relationships. I think that's one of the ways in which he navigated some of the violence. But ironically, as we saw in this powerful slide presentation, W.E.B. Du Bois, who was not terribly religious, also attended my church, because that's where the educated elite went. And they had poetry readings and different kinds of literary circles. So the church that I pastor has a really complicated kind of cultural legacy because of the ways in which, as the former black pastor wrote, they were between black and white. And in 1906, when they had the race riots and Booker T had just come, they had to try to figure out the way forward. And so members of my church, because they were a part of the educated black elite, they negotiated with white people downtown Atlanta about how we could try to heal the racial division. So it's a fascinating and complicated time. Du Bois left after the riots because of the riots and didn't come back for some time. So it's a fascinating and in some ways very, very dark commentary on where we've been. But also when you look at the modern Atlanta, it's also a commentary on progress. It's always a double-edged sword.
You want me to theorize too? Oh, okay. In theory, I believe that much like contemporarily, there's a lot you can do as a millionaire, right? That affords you some access to spaces, some access to conversations, and a certain level of protection. I think that at that time in Atlanta, it was impossible to not know who Alonzo Herndon was. Like that, he wasn't a secret millionaire. Like it was very clear. So I think that afforded him some protection. I also think, and I want to say shout out to the Herndon Home for the work that they do in preserving the Herndon's legacy. And if you haven't been there, definitely go. But I think what's also to its advantages, it's kind of tucked away. Like, we're over in the AUC, and the majority of our students don't even know that it's there. I send students there all the time. Also, the house was really constructed in the post-race riot moment, right? Because Adrian said, if you want me to return to Atlanta, to this racial violence, to this racial terrorism, you'll build me a mansion on a hill, and that's what he did. So I think that plays some part in that as well. I think that Atlanta also is one of the most interesting African-American cities that you study because there's like pockets, right? And even, like you said, though there's no differentiation between if you're rich or if you're poor, I think that there are some elements of kind of a social hierarchy that take place in Atlanta too that kind of afford you a certain amount of protection as well. Theorizing. And y'all know I'm a historian, so I like to deal in actual, but this is my theory. Yes.
I would just say that it's the money. You know, that all the money. There was a business integration in Atlanta before there was a social integration in Atlanta. So there was a mutual thing between white business and black business. They had a symbiotic relationship. So that's different in Atlanta than other places.
Yeah, I think that's very true. That's one of the reasons why when all the other cities were burning in the 60s, Atlanta didn't have the riots that some of the other cities had, and it's because Atlanta has always negotiated race behind closed doors, and it's been the business community that has led the way in which race gets negotiated. It's not to say that we're further along than other people, but there is an Atlanta way. And so, for example, when Dr. King got the Nobel Prize and everyone was going to rebuff him, it was really the Koch family that said, no, we're going to celebrate our Atlanta son, and the business community was told to show up. And that's a part of that story.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we really, really, really have to wrap up. Really. Like I said, I ain't going to jail with y'all now. You all are too cute to be sitting up in jail, let me tell you. You're just too cute.
Can I just interject quickly?
What quickly? Has to be quickly.
Okay. So
you get to go first to jail.
So when we talk about certainly the Atlanta business community, and it is very strong, but also remember the student movement. that whole generation of divide they did not want to hear from the old guard, the Atlanta business community. But that's in any struggle. You're going to have a generation that just wants to do it a different way.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's give another big hand to the presenters, speakers, sponsors, and the Georgia State Swing and Jazz Band. Okay, I just got word that the cops have raided the Brick Store Pub. That's too close for me. I look too good to go to jail. I'm kidding. We all do. I'm kidding. And by the time they get to us, we'll be long gone. It looks like we've made it through this. Please, we invite you to become a member of the DeKalb History Center today or at your convenience, visiting our membership table in the back, and Mrs. Fann is back there with her book. So we want to thank everybody. We want to thank all of you. We want to thank Ms. Forgay, our executive director, and all of the marvelous DeKalb History Center staff. And we want to thank Ms. Tiffany Parks, who calls me and leaves me messages at 2 o'clock in the morning. And for some reason, I wake up. But Ms. Tiffany is awesome, and she prepares these programs. She writes it, and she calls me, and we talk about it, and we walk it out, and it's always a pleasure to provide these programs and bring in the quality programs to the citizens of DeKalb County. At this time, please go visit Ms. Fann, check out our Facebook page and Twitter. Comment on this program. If you have anything negative to say, keep it to yourself. Of course you wouldn't. Okay, it's time for us to go. Now listen, don't everybody rush out at once. The cops are close by. We don't want to cause suspicion. I want you to just be copacetic. Can you say copacetic? Okay, this concludes our Jazz Age in the South program with an African American perspective. We are so glad that you came, Thank you. Please thank the jazz band again. They rock the house.